So in homeopathy, there's potentially many different remedies we can use to treat depression. So homeopathy is based on the principle of like cures like. So therefore is the idea that we find a remedy who, in its mental, emotional, physical symptom picture, is most like that of the patient. Is that how you choose a remedy to match to a patient in a depression situation?
Yes, we have probably almost every remedy we have has at some point a stage of depression.
Okay.
So if it goes far enough. So yeah, we just don't have one. Even when we look in our book, we have like 178 remedies for depression. 178, much more than any Western medical repertorium right there. Okay, there, you know. So we have so many different ones, but how do we choose the one that fits you?
Yep.
Because we don't always talk about the depression. We talk about the patient with depression at this point.
Sure.
That means I'll take into account. I want to ask what happened first of all. What triggered this off? The trigger is the first thing that we want to know. You know, was it a grief? Was it a work-related thing? Was it a deception? Was it a betrayal? You know, was it somebody who really was rude to you? Was it because you might have moved from a country overseas and now you come into a new country and nobody speaks your language and you feel isolated? Even more, we can see it that a child is born in that particular state, you know, because intra-utero, while the mother was pregnant, there was such a factor of trigger, betrayal, deception, abandonment, not enough support for the person, all felt as a grief. And therefore, unfortunately, we can actually put a child on earth starting with a grief. You know, this is very important. So that's the first thing we take into account is this trigger, this different trigger. What the key question is, of course, that we ask the person, what happened in your life when this grief started, or when the depression started? You know, what happened? What kind of thing triggered it off? You know, once we know that, then we also ask, well, how did you cope with it? What did you do? Because we still have, let's say, 180 remedies. That means they all really are related to, not all related to grief, obviously, but let's say we come down to 25 remedies that all relate to grief. And now we want to know, but how do we distinguish that? And so we ask, basically, what did you do? How did you cope with this, you know? Some people, and we always say, when nobody reacts the same way to grief, right? And that's really true, but we actually can predict how they react. In other words, somebody can just react by just hanging on to everybody, phoning everybody up, you know, telling about their grief, and they need that support from other people. Others might just get drunk, go to the pub and get drunk to forget and start taking drugs. Other people might actually, to this grief, become self-destructive and become alcoholic. Take drugs and become really, you know, destructive and self-destructive. So you see here too, that part we take into account. How does the patient react to it? Because each of these remedies have one of those components in it, and we can really adjust it to the patient.
So, in taking a homeopathic case, in the context of our discussion today, for someone that presents with depression, then their life history is a very important component of that. Their
life history, and as we call it, their timeline, so that we go really from birth, so to speak, to the moment that the person sits with us. And we must not forget that the person who presents to us is really the sum of everything that happened to that person, not just from the last month. Obviously, whatever the trigger was important, but we really do go back in a timeline, just the whole lifeline, really, and see where was anything happening that maybe was even similar, or even that could have prepared the patient even more to be susceptible to depression. What particular events happened? Don't forget, we might have 1, 2, 3 events and the patient is still doing pretty much okay, but then all of a sudden something else happened and it's the drop that makes the bucket overflow, no? So it doesn't really sometimes, or sometimes we really see that the same event happened 3, 4 times, and the 4th time basically the patient decompensates and now he comes into a depression.
So Dr. Luc, do you find sometimes when you take a case of someone that presents with depression that there can be a family history of it as well? Obviously not in every case, but sometimes there can be. How does that impact on how you're going to treat them homeopathically?
Yeah, we look, of course, like you said, just like regular Western medicine would do. You look at the family history. but we don't really just satisfy ourselves with having to see if depression, the same name of the disease again, is present. No, it can happen, obviously,
Sure.
you know, and it often happens, but we look at also other expressions of what we think belong to the same root of the problem. In other words, all mental diseases, suicide, alcoholism, anorexia nervosa, you know, I mean, destructive diseases, even pathology,
Sure.
diseases like Alzheimer's disease, multiple sclerosis, you know, Parkinson's disease, anything that basically in its pathology shows destruction. In other words, when we find that in the family, that for us is the same root, it's just with a different expression. So we have a broader definition of hereditary factors, even when we just say, let's look if this person in his family history has problems, so would be more susceptible to depression, as we say it.
So if someone has a family history of say, depression in their family, then that also is taken into account in choosing the homeopathic medicine that you'll give them?
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
right? So because I already talked about it, you know, how did they cope with it? Was it with a destructive way? Was it also not destructive? To some extent, why do we take it in account? Not so much really to choose the remedy, because that we do really with the patient, the picture of the patient should be enough, but also it gives us an idea, and more important for us, to how strong this is basically present in the patient, you know, the root of it. In other words, it gives us an idea how long we're going to have to treat this, how, you know, it gives us an idea what we have to take as potency, how much to repeat, how much to give, the dose, and so on and so on. Do we actually need to even address the background, you know, I would call it a hereditary background,
Sure.
and we always have to.
Okay.
Right? So that really, for that particular reason, it's important to look at it.
Okay. So practically, if someone's watching this video today with depression, probably one question a lot of people would have is, how long, if you go to a homeopath, a classical homeopath, to get depression treated, how long do you have to take the remedy for? How long does treatment take?
It is not a lifelong treatment, so to speak. No. You know, so the bottom line is, as you know, when we do regular Western medicine, then often the answer to that question would be, as long as you feel good, we don't want to stop it.
Okay.
It's just the opposite in homeopathy. When you start feeling better, you start backing off. You start taking it less. You start taking it less frequent, for sure. So it's depending, as you see, on an individual basis, because
Sure.
you can't put one answer to that. How long has it been already? Of course, right? You talked about the hereditary background. How strong is the hereditary background? Because that would be another factor to take in account. You know, is the patient doing all the right things? Of course. Are they not really, you know, bringing an obstacle to the cure by doing things they shouldn't do? In other words, lifestyle, hygiene, lifestyle, diet, and so on and so on. As a homeopath, we need to look more than just giving a remedy.
Sure.
We basically become their confidant, become their trustworthy person, a friend, a counselor, you know, their dietitian, anything we can, so to make the person stay on the right track. But we stay with each dose of the remedy we give. We need to see progress with the patient, and as we see progress, less and less the remedy will need it, and at some point, obviously, when it's restored, when this whole trauma is restored, nothing is needed anymore.
Okay.
The patient is really done.
So when someone with depression, chronic depression, is treated effectively with homeopathy, the depression ultimately completely goes, that symptom completely goes.
Absolutely, it is completely gone, and the person finds again joy in what they were finding before, you know, it has again a meaning of life, and so on and so on. That truly is a cure, as we would call it, not controlling the disease, but truly a cure.
All right.